Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I've got a full tank review for you on this. It's the Squall. It's a tier 8 Czechoslovakian premium light tank, and while it might not be the most competitive of vehicles, today I'm going to show you why this can probably be one of the most fun premiums you can get your hands on. This vehicle has the funky autocannon mechanic that just came out this year with the Czech light tanks, but you've got the advantage of being a premium tank, so you can make extra crew training as well as also making a good amount of credits as well. And in today's video, I'm really going to let you know about whether it's just way better than the tech tree Czechoslovakian light tanks. So there's only really one tank to compare the Squall to, and that is the Blesk. But for good measure, I'm also going to add in the tier 9 Czechoslovakian light tank, the Shelma, as well, so you can get an idea of how the Squall competes as a tier 8 tank versus a tier 9 tech tree vehicle. So immediately we notice the damage per minute of the Squall is less than the Blesk and significantly worse than the Shelma. However, its penetration is closer to the Shelma than the Blesk, which is a tremendous advantage because these Czech light tanks have horrendous penetration. Now, you can up the penetration of this tank to 236 with the gold rounds, but you'll notice that you actually lose alpha damage. Your alpha damage goes from 8 down to 6, which you're losing a quarter of your magazine potential. Your magazine goes from 800 down to 600 total alpha damage. But interestingly enough, the gold rounds on this tank, they're actually cheap. They don't cost anything more than the regular rounds on this vehicle. And so it's kind of maybe how they should have originally designed World of Tanks, right? It's a little bit too late now with all of the different armor levels, and it would break the game if they were to nerf gold rounds. But look, that's a topic for another video. In addition to this advantage on the AP and the APCR compared to the Blesk, it has 50 millimeters of HE pen. That is the same as the Shelma, and it absolutely dominates the Blesk's 37 millimeters of HE pen. Now that's super important because the alpha damage potential of this tank doubles when you load HE. Your alpha goes from 8 per shell up to 16, meaning that your mag damage goes from 800 to up to 1,600 damage that you can deliver in 3.6 seconds, which allows this to have 4,000 damage per minute if it is penetrating those HE shells. Absolutely terrifying stuff. Another advantage the Squall has, at least over the Blesk, is the caliber of the gun, and the higher alpha damage means that you have to fire less shots. And that's an advantage because your gun blooms out less. Meaning that while you might have a smaller magazine potential of 800 compared to 840, not only do you deliver it quicker in 3.6 seconds, you also bloom out less, allowing you to be more accurate while doing it. So now onto the gun handling of the Squall. 2.2 seconds is better aim time than the Blesk, 0.4 accuracy better than the Blesk, better moving and dispersion values when turning the turret than the Blesk, very much like a Shelma. But while this vehicle has much worse gun depression than the Blesk, it's 1 degree worse than the Shelma. All in all, the Squall's gun is looking great compared to the Blesk in this regard. However, it all comes tumbling down a little bit when we take a look at the top speed limit of this tank. 55? This is a slow light tank. And you're going to have other medium tanks contesting early positions before you unless you elect to use a turbo on this tank. And while the power to weight ratio of this vehicle is not impressive compared to the other two Czechoslovakian light tanks in this comparison, its ground resistances are, so it very much consistently gets up to this 55 km/h top speed limit. Another little downside of this vehicle is that its turret traverse at 42, while it's by no means bad, it's not great compared to the other two vehicles. And so when you're very fast and you're trying to surround your opponents to try and get their weaker side or rear armor, sometimes you can actually out-traverse your hull traverse, which can be very awkward when you fire off 100 shells not at the enemy tank. Armor-wise, this vehicle basically just doesn't have any. And so if you are fighting a Squall, then really you can just load HE and just absolutely dominate the vehicle's lower plate, even if you only have 50 millimeters of pen. The turret armor is awful as well, and if you get the side or the rear of the Squall, well, let's just say Squall versus Squall combat is pretty much who can get the side or the rear and just unload an HE mag, or clean shots into the lower plate will do it as well. And if you're fighting Squall versus Squall, you should always angle at 45 degrees to try and make sure the enemy can't penetrate HE shells against you. Add to this a hit point advantage over the Blesk, and there are enough advantages in enough areas here that this is just looking like a more dominant tank. Finally, the Squall has the same camo rating as the Blesk, which is really good. You can get up to like 50% camo on this tank if you take the best of exhausts, and 380 meters view range, well, it's not good. It's not awful. Crew-wise, all you view Czechoslovakian light tank lovers out there will be happy that the crew is identical to the Tier 8 and the Tier 9 or the Tier 10. So TESAC users, you just move your crew into this vehicle and you'll be good right from the get-go. Crew skills wise, I would recommend Brothers in Arms, Repairs, Concealment, Recon, Coordination, and Emergency on this tank. For your radio operator skills on the command, I would recommend Situational Awareness, Communications Expert, and Jamming. If you really want durability, not that this tank does have any of it, you could go Firefighting instead of one of those, but I would probably focus on the scouting capabilities of this tank. For your gunner, take Brothers, Repairs, Concealment, Designated Target, Armorer, and I like Concentration on this tank for getting that better accuracy, sitting still and setting up a full mag dump ambush. For the loader skills on your gunner, you must take Intuition on this tank, and also Ammo Tuning is big value as it can increase the alpha damage effectively of your AP and especially your HE shells on this tank. To add to that, you could take Safe Stowage on this vehicle, or alternatively you could take Perfect Charge on this tank if you're having trouble giving lead because this vehicle does have bad shell velocity. Finally, for your driver skills, take Brothers, Repairs, Concealment, Engineer, must, off-road driving, and smooth ride on this tank. For your equipment, I would recommend 2 builds on the Squall. Firstly, if you have perfect crew skills and you're willing to use bounty vents, I would recommend to take them on this tank. However, if you don't have any of those, take coated optics instead. Add to that an exhaust and a vision system and you will be a very proficient scout. The reason why I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of view range on this build to be able to get the benefit of the vent is because quite often with the Squall you want to switch out magazines, and that improved crew skill from the vent allows you to do so in a significantly shorter time, and shaving off a second off your mag switch so you can have HE shells when you need to, or APCR shells so you can actually penetrate the target, or AP shells when you want to do more damage against softly armored tanks. It's a tremendous advantage. But again, this is pay to win. If you don't use the premium consumable, definitely use the coated optics for your scout build. For my second build on this tank, I'm going for full firepower. That will be vent, vert stabs, and I'm going to be using an experimental turbo. And if you can do so, if you have enough of them, put stabilizer greasing on this tank and you will have very nice bloom after firing, and that will be very useful for mid to long ranges. Field mods wise on this tank, it is nice and simple. Get yourself the top speed limit, then take the accuracy on this vehicle, follow it up with a reverse speed, and for your bonus slot, I'd end up taking firepower on this tank to improve your vert stabs if you're not putting bounty or bond. Anyway, that's quite enough theory crafting. Let's see what the first premium autocannon is capable of in the gameplay. So firstly, we're going to be rolling out on Redshire against tier 10 vehicles, and you'll see that unfortunately I get blocked by the E50 at the start of the game, and when you're as slow as this tank is, every second can help with actually being able to get to the front to contest the locations. I'm using standard equipment for this game of the vision system, the coated optics, and the exhaust. Again, unless you've got a bounty or a bond vents on this tank, I wouldn't recommend using them as your view range just gets so low. But you will have to suffer, as I said, with the magazine switch outs. And this tank, all 3 flavors of ammunition are useful. And being able to switch quickly to be able to use those different flavors against all of the juicy targets on the enemy team will give you a tremendous advantage. So one of the things that's very surprising about the Czechoslovakian light tanks is they are very sneaky indeed. They've got great camo, and not a lot of people really think that they're not nearly as good as like the British lights, for example, but a lot of people think that they're way worse than they actually are. One thing I will say about the Squall, however, is that with its limited gun depression, you just have way less opportunity to kind of get yourself into sneaky positions than you would do in a Blesk. Another thing to mention in this tank, as a lot of you are probably seeing, it's actually pretty huge. It's long, it's tricky to be able to find bushes sometimes that are like this, and with the way that the front sticks out, I mean, this would be a great design if it had like 100 millimeters of armor, but it doesn't. It doesn't have 100 millimeters of armor. It has no armor, and so you're never ever ricocheting anything in World of Tanks with a plate like this on the front. It's a glass cannon. And having a big hull like this is not an advantage. It just means that there's more area for your opponents to be able to catch you. And if that's the case, you're going to be pretty sad. So again, just look how long this intuition switch is without the vents. It is pretty painful. And I have to admit, I kind of got used to the quicker intuition switching on the TESAC. And this thing with its much longer mag reload than the TESAC, it definitely can't switch as quickly. And you can't be as reactive. You have to be a little bit more forward thinking with how you play. Now, there you go. Maybe that's the first time you've seen an autocannon fire in World of Tanks. I don't know what I'm firing there. I think I was maybe just doing a little bit of testing for myself mentally to see how quickly I could be able to get the mag out. So it's an interesting predicament when you're playing Czech lights. Do you just hold down the mouse button and burr and then be able to reload, or should you pulse your guns? Well, if you're playing in a Tessac or even a Shelmer with its higher damage per minute, I would recommend just to hold down the mouse button, get all the rounds out, and then start reloading again. However, with a vehicle like this, you've got to consider that its reload is quite long, but its intra-clip its unload speed is actually quite short. That's so satisfying to be shooting a Progetto and just to turn and just go, nope, mate, get out of here and just move on. So, in a Shelmer, you might actually want to spend a little bit more time nursing those rounds to deliver them more accurately towards the target than just going full rip and then having the quite substantial reload that happens immediately afterwards. Now, that's going to be down to you. It's going to be your choice as to whether you want to just let the mag rip or whether you want to pulse those rounds. But if you are going to pulse rounds in any Czech light tank, this is probably the one to do it in. Alright, so Mr. Nomad over here seems to have got themselves in an awkward situation. And with these Czech lights, it's that you've got to have this like feeling of working long range and being the support tank, but also not being afraid to just go get stuck in and dump mags. And in that kind of a situation, auto-aim is as good as anything. I'll talk about as good as anything. Dang, those carrows gave it to me, right? Absolutely ripping me apart. But luckily, I can manage to spot them, keep them at an awkward angle, and to get my 5120 and friends working it, and they're going to have to scurry away behind the ridgeline like the naughty little Italian tanks they are. So, one thing you must do, as I was just highlighting in this tank, is these vehicles, they're not very good at long range compared to what they are at short range. Good night, Bat Chat. It never gets boring dumping mags in this tank. So, what you want to do is use your camo, use the vision system, use the exhaust, to be able to get close to your opponents. And once you get close to them, you kind of wait for an opportunity where they can't really say no to you. When they're not focused on you, they're engaging other tanks on your team. And when that's the case, yeah, you've got two little guns that are going to cause them a lot of grief, to say the least. And so you want to kind of play around on the fringes, and try and wait for your assassination opportunities, try and find your angles and engage when safely. I guess the real problem with these tanks is a lot of other tier 8 lights don't have to do that. They can just stop and they can dump, and they're going to do more than like 100 damage before the enemy is able to react. Most tier 8s are doing at least 200 to 300 damage per shell. Maybe not so much of the lights, but most of the lights are probably between 150 and 200. And look how we struggle to do, what was that, about 250 damage to the Carra there in an awkward fashion. We were quite lucky we had to expose ourselves. The enemy tank would have had time to be able to turn around and give it to us. And I don't like dying to Carras in those kind of scenarios, right? Are we going to get the kill here? Oh yeah, I have to admit, this vehicle's fantastic for finishing off tanks. It gets a lot of kills within that regard. And sometimes you can even get multiple vehicles in quick succession with a single mag, just like that. Beautiful. There we go. That's 5 kills and 4,400 combined in the Squall against tier 10 tanks. What more can you really want from a tier 8 light tank? This thing absolutely slaps when it gets going. So let's do it again. More tier 10 tanks for the Squall. And we are on a lovely light tank map, Fisherman's Bay. This is all about, again, using the vision system exhaust build and making our way towards the center and trying to spot out our opponents. However, just look at this thing's speed. And remember, this is with the field mod, this is with engineering. That's why we're going at 58 and we're not going at 55. It is not fast. Other medium tanks like a Pantera and a Borask are challenging those positions. That can be very awkward. You also know what is very awkward? When you literally just drive out through the bush, and because you've got a huge front on the tank, you get spotted like an absolute idiot and then lose most of your hit points at the start of the battle. So don't be a little noob like Uncle QuickyBaby there. However, one thing that's pretty nice is that IC Communications Expert just went up, and we don't even have that amount of spotting that we've actually seen. So it looks like we were getting quite a lot of hidden spotting against our opponents there, and oh my word, what is this WZ-132 doing? Okay, we're going to hit them a little bit there. 272 damage, actually. Pretty substantial amounts of damage. It does add up against these weakly armored tanks. And yeah, just chaos in the middle of the map, right? Chaos in the middle of the map. I'd say we're up to at least 2,000, including the blind spotting that we've been getting. And now it's just about working these bushes. You can be quite a proficient scout. Hoping that maybe I can switch out to HE rounds here for the Grilla. I'm thinking about it, aren't I? I lick my lips when I see the opportunity to shoot at a lightly armored German tank in this vehicle, because you do have that 1,600 HE magazine potential. Don't get caught with an HE mag needing an AP mag against the SW1. Pretty awkward in that situation. Okay, so the Squall. Just got to chill out here, try and find some spots, find some angles at our opponents, see if our team's going to be able to push through the town. Right now, just extending vision and looking for opportunities. And with the vision system exhaust build, along with the coated optics here, we will have more than enough view range to be able to challenge our opponents. But you aren't going to be the best of light tanks with regards to your scouting capability at tier 8. So do keep that in mind. There will be better light tanks out there. I'm looking at you, ELC even 90. However, while there will be better scout tanks out there, there aren't any better light tanks who are just absolutely ripping them apart. This is the most dangerous tier 8 light tank in the game, by far. It makes the Blesk look timid in comparison. You see, I'm trying to get this Pantera out of the way here so I've got more of a clean run that I don't have to worry about. Getting myself distracted when I could just be ripping apart a Borask. I don't think I really needed to switch to an HE mag there. I think I should have just gone with the AP. And while it would have definitely killed him it would have taken me twice as long to kill him, I still think it would have just been worth it. So, the moral of the story is, sure, try and switch to use the right mag for the job, but don't waste your life in doing so. But oh my word, man, 666 damage to the E50 there on the side. These things clap, and you'll be very surprised in how you can manage to make 182 millimeters of pen work when you can choose the engagement. Let me stress that to you. These vehicles are awful if you just bomb it around and you're spotted the whole time. They need to stay hidden. They need to be able to... interesting case study there. When we just absolutely let rip, we did 449 damage on the broadside of a 111 1 FT there. I digress. Let me finish what I was saying. And that is that if you just bomb it around while you're spotted, you are going to have a really bad day. What you have to do is stay hidden. Then you have to be able to control the engagement, choose the fights, choose how the engagement happens, so you've preloaded the right kind of ammo, and that is what you will have to do to be successful in any of the Czech lights, but especially in the Squall. Gosh darn it, that Borask literally just stole that kill with only 15 left, and all I can hope to do now is really catch this STRV, but alas, I don't. Still, another meaty game, 5,000 combined and a solid ace tanker, but this time without the 5 kills that we had on Redshire. So I can hear some of you in the audience right now saying, oh, Uncle QuickyBaby, what are you doing? You're just using vision system, exhaust, and outspotting people and going in and getting clean mags. Okay. Well, how about this? Let's play on mines in a top-tier matchup where everyone's tier 8s. Let's take vents, vert stabs, nearly forgot what they were called there, goodness gracious, and also a level 3 experimental turbo, so we have great gun handling. Let's see what this tank does now. It's a magic trick, really. Oh, I don't even need to fire the full mag. I'll wait for the links to come round, and... What? Okay, great. That link's got absolutely dumped on there as well. This thing can literally take out nearly multiple tier 8 light tanks, and it could definitely take out multiple tier 7 light tanks if it could manage to connect all of its shells. Absolutely disastrously deadly within that regard. And when you get those kind of H engagements on the Squall, I don't know, it just feels like it's the best thing ever. So I don't really want to sit up on the hill with a tank with only 6 degrees of gun depression, just not do anything in this game. So instead I'm going to go take the fight to the enemy team and see if I can go catch out the Borask. There's one thing I didn't think about, and that is sneaky ELC even 90s that want to shoot me. Okay, well, how about this? How about you just take this? Yeah. That's nearly his entire tank with HE there, even though I was moving while I was engaging. I think if I'd stopped a little bit earlier, I think we could have probably got the entirety of that ELC even 90. And can you believe that? Just like that, it's absolutely ridiculous mag potential. And immediately we're up to 1,500 damage in this battle. When you choose to use this combat build in the tank, not only are you faster with that experimental turbo, but you got the vert stabs as well to allow you to just... Oh, Oh, baby. Oh, not quite again. That was nearly the whole of a Borask. And there you go, 2.5 minutes into the game, 2,700 damage, and we pretty much got out 2 to 3 tanks in this round. That is what the power of the Squall is when you get on those all-in engagement maps. I would take this build on a map like Mines. I would take this build on a map like Tundra, Ensk, Himmelsdorf, Runeberg. With this build, you turn the tank into an absolute powerhouse, and with well-timed aggression and good knowledge of the tank's capabilities and your opponent's armor layouts, you can be one of the most dangerous tanks on the battlefield. So time for the final round of this tank review, and you can see that I've set my Squall up to look pretty cool. All of the previous games you saw me playing with standard equipment. I'm going to be using premium equipment, bounty equipment here on my main account. So all in all, the Squall, what do I think about it? Is it the new best Czechoslovakian light tank? It might be the new best one tier for tier. I'd say it's better than the Tesak is at tier 10. I'd say it's probably better than the Shelmer is at tier 9. And it's definitely better than the Blesk is at tier 8. However, the Blesk, with its extra gun depression, if you get into a situation where you don't need to use the HE, then with AP and APCR, it's pretty good. But nothing really feels like a Squall dumping HE. Look at that absolute deletion on the enemy tank. And I knew that I had the side of his turret the whole time, and as soon as he managed to turn his turret towards us, we can drop down and go for his lower plate. 1,100 damage. Nothing feels like that at tier 8. One of my favorite 3 marks of this year was not just the Tesak, but also the Shelmer. The Shelmer was really fun at tier 9 because it had these 50mm HE rounds that you had so many tanks where you had opportunities to actually get these HE mags in. Way more than on the Tesak. The Tesak with its tier 10 matchmaking constantly, unless you get lucky and get to shoot FE405s or a load of other light tanks or artillery. Yeah, those HE rounds, they're useful, but they're not the be-all and end-all of the tank. However, to be able to have this gun now drop down to tier 8 and you only lose 100 alpha damage off the magazine with AP or 200 with HE, don't get me wrong, the Shelmer and the Tesak can still do 1,800 damage with their HE, which is absolutely staggering. But this thing, I'd rather do 1,600 HE with the same pen at tier 8, because you end up fighting against tier 6 and tier 7 tanks and way more tier 8s that are pennable and less 9s and 10s, right? By the very nature of being down an entire tier. And so the Squall it's wild. It really is. And even when you can't pen those HE shells, those magical HE shells that make the tank feel like one of the most fun vehicles in the game, even when you're just going for AP at these kind of ranges, there's something really fun about ripping and tearing and going full auto on your opponents and firing out 100 rounds within those 4 seconds. And with a vision system exhaust build as we're using here, this position has been paying massively off for me recently. Nobody seems to want to contest this area on the enemy team. Once you manage to get rid of the enemy light tanks, and you can do so with assassination tactics with those HE, then you suddenly have a big old area to play with. So I'm not fully loaded, otherwise I would be switching out to an HE shell here, but luckily it looks like my team are managing to deal with him. So I'm not going to switch out for HE, I'm just going to go for him instead. And you can even fire as you're coming around the corner in this tank if you know your opponents are on low health, because you don't need to worry about missing a shot, right? You got 100 shells. If they've got 100 hit points, you only have to hit 1/8 of your mag. So fire as you come around the corner to start that aggressive and suppressing fire against them and try and get them out of the game as quickly as possible. Just hopefully get your reticle on the tank. And we are just absolutely clapping right now. I was thinking, oh, it's just so fun to have this tank behind opponents that don't really consider it to be that much of a threat or didn't consider it to be in a position. And if they've got other vehicles that they have to focus on, and you've still got your 1,100 hit points, you know, you can become the hunter. And this tank, it hunts. And it just feels so rewarding as a hunter. However, don't be a noob and get caught by a Tiger II like me, right? Luckily, the Tiger II doesn't find us. All they find is a big old shell to the side there. Looks like it was from a Kalana at a decent distance. And we're up to 5,300 combined in the first 4 minutes of the battle. Once again, an absolute killer game for the Squall. And while I'm not going to say that all of my games were like this, a lot of them really were. And it does feel like a fantastic premium within that regard. So this tank currently available inside the loot boxes. Is it worth gambling to be able to get this tank? No, I think this is probably the one that most people don't want to get inside the loot boxes. However, if you're anything like me, you might actually end up enjoying this vehicle. I'm enjoying it more than the Toro. At the moment, at least. Am I enjoying it more than the Contradictious? Yeah, probably. I'm definitely not enjoying it more than the DCT-159. More than the XM57. Yeah, I'd say I am enjoying it more than the XM57 as well. I'd say it's probably the third, it's the middle one of the bunch, at least for me and my enjoyment. Now, everyone's results may vary, and remember, I've played hundreds of games in Czech light tanks to get to a position where I feel like I can make the Squall work. But boy, when you get it to work, and you're pumping out that 6,500 combined in 5 minutes, and you do it in such a fun way, yeah, this is a solid tank. However, Wargaming has a problem, and that is that Czech light tanks just aren't competitive. The Tesac is giving its owners minus 4.4% win rate, with the worst win rate on any of the tier 10 lights. The Shelmer as well, minus 2.31. The Blesk even minus 1.8. And the Squall has been giving its owners nearly minus 3% win ratio. This is just a skill issue. People don't know how to play this vehicle, and while even great players will still have worse win ratio in their Czech light tanks, the exceptional of you out there will actually be able to perform in them if you're willing to invest in the right equipment and the right patience and good knowledge of your opponents to use the correct rounds. Those are the keys to victory in all of the Czech light tanks, and the Squall is no exception. And so for everyone watching this video at a future date when these aren't inside the loot boxes and Wargaming are trying to get you to buy them for money or for gold, or whatever the case may be, would I recommend picking up this tank? If you like the Czech light tanks, yes. However, these are quite tricky tanks to play, and unless they get buffed in the future, they are not in a good position to be competitive. However, what I will say is they are so darn fun. And so I find myself going and playing Czech light tanks when I want to blow off a little bit of steam and have a little bit of a giggle. And now that the Squall's in the game, I might be playing the Tesac less and at least making some good credits in the Squall when I want to get that Czech light tank autocannon action. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for today. Really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments what you think about the Squall. Do you think it's just clearly better than the other Czech light tanks, like the Blesk and the Shelmer, effectively like a Shelmer down a tier? Or do you think that it looks like it's balanced? And considering how bad the Czech light tanks, the Squalls, at least it's getting a little bit of love within that regard. And if you're watching this video as it goes live on Monday, I'm going live all day on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby with brand new Christmas tokens. So come and get them so you can get closer towards getting a tier 7 premium tank for free. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.